This is the Discuss Metal podcast with Toby Wright, hosted by Dan Terry and Joseph Wren, presented by discussmetal.com.
What's going on, everybody? This is the Discuss Metal podcast, episode 2. Hope you guys really liked the first episode. We got some pretty good feedback on that one with Paul Kerr of November's Doom. And this week we're pulling out all the stops. A couple weeks ago, well, it was a few weeks ago, Joe...
It was more like 2 months ago, dude.
It was 2 months ago. It's been flying by. We've been doing too much stuff. I've been too busy, but Joe decided that we need a studio remodel. So he did that. But during all of that, we got an email from Toby Wright, who was attending the Rock and Pod Expo down in Nashville, which we unfortunately were not able to attend this year. And he fires us off an email and was like, hey, guys, are you guys here? You guys are around anywhere? And unfortunately, we were not. I said no, but, we sure would love to talk to you. So Toby was kind enough to sit down with us and have a conversation. But the problem is that we didn't have a studio. So we did it all on my MacBook.
Imagine our reaction when the studio is fully dismantled. There is wood on the floor. There's paint drying on the walls. And Toby Wright sends you an email and says, so you guys want to chat or what? Well, we got to do it now.
Yeah, now you have to do it. So we did it. We had a fun conversation with Toby. We talked about his first big break producing a record, which is a really cool story. We talk about his method for listening to songs and kind of getting an idea. I really liked his analogy. Well, it wasn't even an analogy, but he just says, I listened to a song and really... He's like, the process just comes to me. He's like, I hear the song and the song tells me what it needs. And just always really inspirational stuff from Toby. And at the end, he talks about a sleep project that he's working on where you can listen to different sounds and frequencies in your sleep. And it's supposed to relieve stress and all that. We will have links to all of that in our show notes. And we'll let you guys hear for yourself. It's always an inspirational time with Toby Wright. Toby?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Toby, how's it going? This is Dan with Discography Discussion.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Well, that's cool. Sorry about all the scheduling and and all that.
Oh, it's all right.
All week I was trying to make sure that my wife didn't go into labor, right before I promised I was going to do something.
Right. Well, that's a hell of a lot more important than getting an interview from me, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's our it's one child of many, so I don't know about that. No.
Well, one is just as important as the last one.
Absolutely. Well, I've got my co-host Joe here with me too.
Hey, Toby, what's going
Joe.
on?
How are you?
Oh, doing pretty good. I was shocked when you reached out and said you wanted to talk to us. Number one, obviously, it's not every day you get an email from Toby Wright. Also, the studio was under complete remodel. And Dan said, well, can we do this? I said, well, we can do something. That's for sure.
Something. We'll get her done. Well, it's my pleasure, gents.
Well, yeah, we'll try not to take up too much of your night. One of the things I wanted to do a little differently than what we did last year at the Rock and Pod Expo, I feel like every time somebody interviews you, it's always like, you worked with this band, you worked with that band, you worked for this band. I kind of want to do something a little different in the sense of finding out, what you would consider to be your personal milestones have been, like when was the first time somebody was like, oh man, we need to get Toby Wright in here right now to fix this.
Oh, well, that would have been three doors down. That one would have been the old fix it. Cause I guess their manager at the time had knew that it was their first signing to Universal, I guess. And they knew what they had in Kryptonite, and they thought it might have been on tape. But so I went in and remixed, what you hear today as the single. And then they had me do the whole album. So that was one of the, they originally, Bill McGathy sent me in and said, hey man, just see if we can get something out of this. I think there's a song there, and I sent it back to him a few days later, and he went, turn up the guitars. I turned up the guitars. He said, perfect.
Well, that'd be my question. When you hear a song like Kryptonite, which is radio poison if you're not a fan, and the greatest thing ever if you are a fan. When you hear that and it's not a single, how do you take it from what it is to what we hear every day? For St. Louis, we're listening to 105.7 The Point or KSHE 95, and I guarantee it's going to get played at least 3 times.
Right. And to make, I mean, I think you're asking about how do you make the song audio ready, you mean, or musically, or both?
Well, I guess it'd be both, and it's kind of an unfair question because it's either the recording quality itself or the composition of the song.
Right.
I don't ever have an answer when somebody plays me something I've never heard. Why my immediate response is you need to change that, you need to put another verse here, put a chorus here, and then all of a sudden you've got what sounds like a single. So what do you do when you hear that song that's not quite there and it needs to be there?
If it's in the arrangement, then I strive to change it to make it that way, either with, parts that I've already got recorded or, have re-record and, add parts or rewrite the song or, whatever we need to do to make what's attracting people to that song, make it even better, right? And finish it out as a full masterpiece, so to speak. And if it's lacking in recording quality, then it depends. It depends how bad it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's just a bad mix, then it's just a bad mix. And, usually what I'm finding is a lot of people overuse plugins like crazy. And I'll get a song, let's say I did one the other day. Young engineer did it. There were at least 3 or 4 plugins on every single channel, and there are about 60-something channels.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, holy smoke. Well, let's start by taking all of these off.
Right.
And see what we have. Then we can go back and then we can kind of go from there. Because, that's usually my approach when somebody asks me to mix something that somebody already tried to mix and, didn't hit the mark for whatever reason. Just start from ground zero and what do you have, what is on tape basically. But these days, what's on your hard drive? What are the original sounds?
Do you think some of that is ear fatigue, just from the process of recording something and you're trying to make it sound like what's in your head?
No, I think it's lack of experience. When you're in the recording studio and you're plugging in gear because, let's say I need a compressor on this and I need an EQ on that, or I need an EQ compression in this chain and I'm going to record it, so it's going to go to tape. Then later when you mix it, you probably don't need that because you've already affected it. But then again, it depends on the mix, right? So, if things are recorded fairly properly, and by properly, I mean if you're, just put up the faders and it sounds like a song and it sounds pretty darn good, then you've done your job. And that's what I would call properly.
Have you ever run into a situation where, everybody's standing there, they're really proud, you're listening to it for the first time, and you've ever just kind of thrown up your hands like, I can't save this? No. I mean, save is an interesting word in that sentence because it depends on their level of expectation. You know what I mean? If they have something that's really poopy and, they think there's a diamond somewhere in there or even a ruby, if I'm able to get a rock out of the friggin' thing, sometimes people are very happy. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the level of expectation at that point, and, oh God, can you please save my song? Can you make it good? Can you make it good? Please. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then even that's an opinion. So it's like, if the manager's making the call or the artist is making the call, it just depends on who's making the call and all that kind of stuff,
Well, and I guess
and if you mix for radio, that's completely different to me.
Yeah, and I guess that the idea of opinions is what's the most interesting thing with what you do. I guess my question is, where does the transition happen where you go from basically
doing a job for somebody like mixing to going into full on producing, where your opinion actually, because beyond the way it is for most people, record producing and mixing is an industry where your opinion actually does matter. And I guess what was that transition like for you? In the early days, as far as going from mixing predominantly to getting more producer roles.
I kind of did it the other way around. I was doing a lot of maintenance and repairing of consoles and, just building studios and stuff like that. And then one day this band called Brighton Rock out of Canada came in to do some demos, and the engineer didn't show up. And the manager said, "Hey man, our engineer is nowhere to be found. Can you record this?" And I was like, "Sure." And I recorded, 4 or 5 songs with them that weekend. And they came to me and said, the manager actually said, "These are the best sounding demos I've ever heard. Would you like to produce the record?" So my first record, and at that point I was still assistant engineering for Ron Nevison and doing, his engineering and stuff like that. So it was like I jumped from assistant engineer with one of the best producers in the world to production immediately. And then, then I did that record, and then came back and, went right back to assisting and engineering and, doing all that stuff. And then later on, after Alice called and I did a bunch of records with them, then mixing started to happen, just like straight mixing of records. And I probably mixed for a year or 2 straight, maybe did 1 or 2 productions in that year, but just primarily mixed.
So that was kind of a big jump for you then, as far as you basically just show up to do a job one day, and before you know it, you're sitting behind the console.
Exactly. I was actually repairing a tape machine when the guy wandered in the room and, "Hey, are you the maintenance guy?" "Yeah, I'm Toby." "Yeah, Steve, nice to meet you." "Okay, cool. Hey, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Sure. Okay, hold on. Let me put away my tools. I'll come in there."
So when they asked you to produce the record, how long did it take you to say yes? Was it just like a no-brainer, or?
Yeah. I said yes pretty much right away, because I liked the band a lot, and we had a lot of fun, and when we were doing the demos, and so I was like, why not go up to where did we do that, in Toronto, I think, at Gill's studio, at the Triumph studio, whatever, I forget what it's called. Phase 1? Is that what it's called? I don't remember. Anyway, it was Gill, the drummer for Triumph studio.
When you're going into a project like that, for me, recording is different from performing. And one of my biggest challenges is trying to record my own stuff. I almost always have to call somebody to come sit and listen to me, make sure I'm getting the take right, making sure everything syncs up, and I have a hard time trusting myself. Could you sit down today and produce Toby Wright's own music, or do you need help with that?
I actually have a partner, and we write and produce a lot of music together, and I found the same thing. I don't think it's very smart for an artist to produce themselves. You need another ear in there. And, if not for help of pushing buttons and QCing your performance, then, maybe help with creativity and, let's take a chance here and let's not here. And, just little suggestions sometimes make the big difference.
Is there a record that you would not make in 2019? Some individuals can sit down with just a laptop, like you said, and record an entire record and use plugins positively to enhance the sound when necessary. I've read a few places where some engineers won't touch a mix if they don't have a console under their hands. Is there a record or recording that you cannot do or would not do because you don't have all your tools, or because you feel like you don't have all your tools?
No. That's one reason I came up through the maintenance department, because what happened was I was working at Electric Lady Studios in New York, and where I started, and up on the 3rd floor was Studio C. It was a little overdub room basically, and a mixing suite, and I think the Stones were up there, and they had a little problem. There was no sound coming out of the console all of a sudden, so they called up the maintenance guy. He came up and he hit one button and then proceeded to take the kid out by his ear, and he'd scream at him in the hallway, and I heard it 3 floors down.
Oh, my goodness.
And I decided that at that moment that I didn't want to be that guy. So I joined the maintenance. That was the maintenance guy. His name was Sal Greco. I joined his team, and so I stayed in maintenance, for the next probably 10 years, learning from him, and then going out to LA and building studios and stuff, like I said earlier. But yeah, that's one reason. Like, I did that so that I would never be that guy that didn't recognize that button or know how to operate a piece of gear. And if you can fix it, you can definitely know how to operate it. I wanted to, so I've done a lot of recordings, field recordings and all kinds of stuff where you just had a little something to work with, and you make it work, because it's all about the moment. And if you capture that moment, that is that moment, period. No matter how you capture it, doesn't matter. It's captured.
Well, and speaking of, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'd say, speaking of moments captured, is there ever, just looking at your, discography, recordings you've been involved in, is there a certain sense of being able to predict what a certain change is? Like, are you able to predict, I guess, whether somebody is playing something that is not going to go over well radio-wise, as far as just because of like changing styles? Like a band for example, like a band like Korn, if they had come out in 2007 playing exactly what they were playing back in 1998, it probably wouldn't have hit as hard or made as much of an impression.
Yeah, no, I understand. I don't know. I think that was a question: am I able to spot that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Sometimes songs surprise me. I can pretty much pick one. I can feel it, when they're going down. And usually when, after a singer delivers their amazing performance, that's when I usually feel it the most. You just know when this is a good song or this one isn't so good,
Sure.
And as far as like going different genres and things like that, I think a good song can just be like with an acoustic guitar or a piano and a vocal, and you get the song. Those are songs that are going to be pretty popular. No matter the instrumentation or orchestration on it, the song comes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the song either has it or it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. And you can, I've learned to recognize that over the years.
Is there a different strategy for a remix, or do you see every mix as a new production? I know you did some mixing for Mushroom Head when they first got picked up by Universal, and most of those songs, and actually all those songs, were previously released on independent albums. And
correct.
We listened to Double X. That was how we heard Mushroom Head, because we were nowhere near the band when they were a local sensation. And going back and listening to like Super Buick, which I really like, it's audibly different, not bad or good, but you can tell that Double X had a different set of hands on it than what all the independent releases had. So did you interpret the mix differently, or was it a situation where they came in and said, these are our songs, can you do everything you do to make them sound as good as possible, because now we got to go on this national tour?
That's, they were re-releasing it for Universal. So it's, the expectation is higher. And if I remember correctly, the record company wanted it to sound like one cohesive new performance, even though, like they had redone it or something, even though I was using the same recordings. So it was interesting, because most of those songs, I remember they're in batches. And they sounded a lot different than the batches sounded a lot different than each other. So that was a challenge to try and find the middle ground, right? Where are all these songs going to sound cohesive together? And so I, took a little time and went through all of them and tried to figure that out and came up with what you hear.
Is that a sequencing decision first, or is that a individual mixing strategy? I'm going to mix Bwomp first, and now I'm going to do my best to make Save Your Sorrow sound exactly like Bwomp.
No, I studied all the tracks first and figured that this lump over here to the left was, needed this kind of a treatment. And this one over here, if I treated, this one in the middle, if I treated that one as, let's say that was my interpretation of the best or the closest that, it could be, right? Then the one on the left, which was lesser than that, what I had to do to bring that to that quality, right? And then the one on the right had other problems. So what I had to do to bring that to that middle quality and try and get those all, so I jumped around according to the batches. You know what I mean?
Right. That leads me to my next question. Is there something that you do first before you even listen to a song? Or do you listen to it first and then treat it as necessary? I know some engineers will always cut below 80 hertz, or they'll send an assistant in to do an initial mix before they even go in and listen to it. Do you have a similar process, or do you always listen first and then make changes as needed?
Yes. Listen first, always. Because what am I changing? What am I going for? What am I supposed to be doing? What if I just go in there and put up the faders and start on the drums? I don't even know what's going on in the song. So, then why would you do it that way? I always just, when I'm doing a mix and I'm in the studio, or even when I'm just, in Pro Tools, just bring up all the faders. Get a nice balance with nothing on it. No EQ, no nothing. Let the song sit there and talk to you. All right, what do you need, song? Song goes, hey, I want some reverb on the vocals. I need a big fat kick drum. I need a snare that's just popping. Okay, cool.
I need some background vocals.
Right. I need something. And it just, like literally, like not literally, but figuratively, they do talk to me. It's like, okay, doing this, doing that. When I was mixing the Corrosion of Conformity Deliverance record, there's a song on there called Clean My Wounds that I just sat there and I was like, man, this song could be so much better. What does it need? Damn it. And I walked around the room and I just let it loop for, however long it took me. And I walked around the console and finally went, ooh, Robert Palmer drums. Oh, so big gated room, right? So I set that up on the console because that's how we did it back in the day when we were running tape, and just, triggered all that stuff and so on and so forth and came up with that sound, and that was the song talking to me. I was like, it needs something to pop better,
So there's no, whenever, we'd already talked about this earlier, but what you're saying is that the song basically is the whole presentation. So the next question I ask you might be null and void just because you already said that. But
okay,
with all the different types of music out and with trends changing all the time, is there ever a style of music that you heard initially or a band you heard initially that you're like, oh, I would never work on anything like this, and then found yourself working on it years later?
No, because I love all kinds of music. And I think there's bad music and there's good music, and those are the only two categories for me. It just depends on my mood. So, being raised in the environment I was raised in, bred all kinds of different music, being thrown at you from opera and theater to jazz and saxophone solos and all kind of crazy stuff. Just amazingly crazy. And then, lots of rock and roll, so I got to know, all kinds of stuff really early. And I think that's really helped me in the long run because I can mix anything, that's easy. Production is a little bit deeper, because you have to know, these days especially, you have to know the genre a little bit better than the next guy.
Sure.
Or equally as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I mean, it's a huge testament to what you do anyway, because like Joe and I we review music, we criticize music, but we never take that next step, where we actually offer something constructive, on it.
Well, that's the key, though. That's the key, because anybody can criticize anything all day long. Yeah, so.
Right.
It's just an opinion, and that's okay.
Right.
But if you have some constructive criticism, that's always the best to help somebody out, especially artists when they're crafting, like, oh, maybe we should say, blah, 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 instead of blah, blah, blah,
right.
Or whatever, and, whether it's, oh man, you need a better snare sound, or, whatever it is that irks you about an artist's music that you think would help them with the masses, then that's a wonderful thing, I think, to bring forward. And it's always dependent on how you bring it forward too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You got to be constructive in your tone of voice as well as in your delivery.
Well, talking about how you bring it forward, is there a mainstream trend you have detested in your career where you went through the process, you mixed the song, everything sounds the way you think it should, but then somebody comes in and says, I need that to be 10 dB higher. Can you do that for me, Toby? Is there something that you've detested? Because I like
you mean
all
the volume
styles.
wars?
Well, volume wars were a good example, but even some people won't listen to songs recorded in the 80s because of the digital snare drum. Because for some reason it sounds robotic, even though it was kind of a trend, but it was also an aesthetic choice and a technology choice. Digital recording was taken off.
That's when, the late 80s, still, I got one of the first Pro Tools rigs in 1993. And I was doing a little beta testing for them and in the studio, and they were 16-bit at the time. And it was like, no, this isn't going to work. I can tell the difference between the computer and the tape and the live drums. Like I recorded live to both formats. And, I flip back and forth between live, tape, and Pro Tools and the computer, and I could tell the difference. And I was like, you got to do better. Then they bumped it up to 24-bit, and I couldn't tell the difference. I was like, oh, okay. So back then, all we had was sampling too, right? Like you talk about the digital snare sound. It's snares that, like, I worked at a place called One-on-One Studios. It was a huge room, so we did a lot of drum tracking, and consequently a lot of snare sampling and kick sampling, tom sampling, so on and so forth. So my sample library is huge because of that. But back then, you had a few machines that would sample and trigger, and it was like, whoa, dude, we can change this. This is awesome. So, when you get a new toy, what do? You play with it all the time. So that's what we all did, right? Because it was new toys. And so to detest the volume wars and the compression stuff, that's the only thing I think just kind of didn't kill anything, just made it more unpleasant to listen to. I like dynamics. I like a fullness in my songs. I like 60 hertz. I like 10K. Don't be MP3 and me and cutting all that stuff off. It's just like,
well, yeah, it became, there came a time where there was no reason to have a good stereo at home, There still isn't. Well, not
unless
necessarily.
Unless you search out audiophile recordings and waves and, high-end stuff. You can't just listen to the radio or iTunes and expect for it to be that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not. No streaming service is worth it either. They all stream MP3s.
Right. Yeah, no, I've been doing all right with a home stereo setup. Just 2 speakers, a mixer, and just a nice turntable has been. Somebody's got it in their idea now to where they got in their head now where they're actually releasing dynamic range recordings, which is a kind of a dumb reason to charge somebody an extra $10, for a record. But whatever. We're going to give it to you. Yeah, for $10 more, you can hear it not sound like shit. Yeah.
Right. Ta-da, Premiere or Primo or some kind of Supreme, some kind of HD sound.
Right. Well, and with the kind of more recent rise in vinyl, I mean, I know for some people it never went away.
Right.
Do you think that that's something that is? I guess were you surprised at all to see that there was more of a trend towards people wanting to collect that physical media again once kind of CDs went out the window? That people went to vinyl after that.
I was afraid for the media, because I thought I love tape. I just love it. It sounds amazing. It's bulky to handle. It costs a lot of money now, but it definitely has superior music capturing abilities than digital. People show me a graph and say, "Man, I got this digital converter. It goes from 0 to light." It's like, yeah. What does that have to do with hearing?
Right.
What does that have to do with music? Like nothing. So, you can capture, something out to 200K. Wow. I don't think I want to hear the crickets farting.
Right.
So, on all the instruments that we know of that we can hear, are all well within our hearing range. So, I think personally that it's a wonderful thing to have vinyl back. Some of it doesn't sound as good as like the originals, because I have a nice vinyl collection myself. And that's okay because I don't know if they're like pressing MP3s or what's going on, but it's like they're cramming more music. They're trying to cram more music into that space too, which I think is limiting the bandwidth.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean,
they're chopping off that 40 hertz.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, boom, gone. Because that, the needle will skip all the way across and back, dude. You'll have one groove on the whole record.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, it's funny because, like, you're right though, because there are a lot of there's a lot of vinyl I've got. I'll be like, oh, I didn't know they pressed this, and then I'll go and listen to it, and I'll be all like, they just basically took some MP3s and pressed them onto, a record, and you're listening to it. And my sound system doesn't lie. It's used to listening. It's used to playing dynamic, full sounding records. And then you throw something on like that, and you're like, oh, what the hell? I could have just streamed this and not paid any money for it. But because it's Nirvana's Nevermind or whatever, they know I'm going to buy it as soon as I see it,
Right. Crazy.
It is crazy. Well, and a lot of it, too, is just the aesthetic of having a physical product in your hands. I think is something that a lot of us, because when me and Joe were growing up, it was all CDs. CDs was the main thing, and we had cassettes before that. But the thing about vinyl that's so funny about it is that we're all collecting it now because we're like, holy shit, we've been getting ripped off all these years, getting this little tiny artwork. With some of these album covers are so cool. I mean, sometimes I've been guilty of buying 2 copies of a record and then framing one of them on the wall just because the artwork is so good.
I've done that myself.
Kind of in wrapping up, I wanted to see if there was anything going on with you that you wanted to promote or get out there for people to check out.
Well, I'm involved in a couple things right now. One is for lack of a better term, a sound healing business. I've been doing that for a long time, researching it, developing it. I think it's going to hit the internet here in, the next couple months. It's pardon me, I'm chewing a tomato. It's something I call tomes. Which is TAUMMHOMS, and you can find that at tomes.com. And what it is, it'll help you sleep. It'll revitalize you in your sleep. It'll give you energy. It can take care of anxiety and depression, lessen them. And you use it as you sleep. It's not music. I call it a tonality, because it's complex conglomeration of frequencies, different frequencies that resonate in your body. So it helps you in a lot of different ways. It has a lot of different potential out there in the world, but we're kind of just jumping into the sleep aspect of life because everybody has to sleep. And, if you are not sleeping well, that you might want to check that out, because it's definitely everybody that I've given it to who've told me, I've got, you can imagine I got tons of friends on the road, just all kinds of different people in my life. And, some of them, oh man, I'm so tired. I've been working my ass off, this, that, and the other, and I can't sleep. I sit there and I just count the freaking bumps on the ceiling. And it's like, oh, try this. And they're like, dude, I slept so good. Like for the past week, I've been using this and I can't, it's amazing. How do you do this? So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's, you guys will have to check it out. It's, it can be
Sign me up.
Disease as well. Well, go to tomes.com and sign yourself up. Right now you can do that.
Okay, yeah, I might do that. I don't sleep well.
If you go to tobywrightmusic.com, I just got that site back up. And I don't know if it's working on the mobile yet, but if you go on the computer for sure, I have a little tab there that says Tomes, and you can click on the big, huge logo, and that will take you to tomes.com, where you can then give us your email address, and we will send you an email when the site comes up, and we will have a 7-day free trial because it's going to be a subscription streaming service.
Very cool.
And yes, I'll be streaming waves.
Oh, there you go. I was just going to ask. I was like,
MP3.
I was going to say, you're not going to give me some shitty MP3s. I'll be like, I slept kind of good, but not as good as I feel like I could.
Let me put it to you this way. I have about a terabyte of audio up on Amazon Web Services right now, ready to be listened to. So it's all waves, and you can tailor your sleeping experience from a half an hour to 12 hours. And, if you pick, I have, different categories of, how deep you want to sleep. And then there's like rain and waterfall and ocean and like lapping waves and, revitalizing type of sounds that humans relax with, or that naturally relax us. And then there's the tonality under it. And then I have the tonality by itself in case you just wanted to hear that.
Very
and
cool.
That's the one I use because it's the most effective.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out because I definitely don't sleep as well as I could. And I thought it was just because I had kids, but yeah.
Well, no, it'll help your kids. It'll help anything with a heartbeat. And I say that proudly because it's worked on my dogs. Whenever I put it on, they come in and lay down, they're out.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, and little kids as well. Just moms of babies and stuff like that. It's really going. It should. I shouldn't say should. I know it helps. I've had moms play it to their fetus in the womb. Like on a little, what do they call them, pregaphone or whatever.
Yeah,
she held up some headphones or whatever to her stomach, and she said the baby was like all agitated and kicking, and she held it up and she played it for like 10 minutes and out like a light.
Oh, wow.
It calmed down, didn't kick for a while. I'm like, okay,
cool.
This works.
That's awesome. Well, cool. So, my wife.
Don't be afraid to play it for your kids too.
Yeah. Yeah, that way they don't have to fall asleep listening to Slayer records.
Yeah, like I have a little bit of a hard time with Blood and Rain in my pillow.
Right, I know it's messed up.
Rain and Blood, rather.
Yeah. Well, very cool. We'll make sure to throw a link up to the website on the show notes for this whenever it posts, and I'll let you know when the interview gets edited and thrown up there and everything. And
yeah, I'm also involved in a company called F3 Entertainment, which is we handle film, movies, and a few record artists, recording artists, namely the band that I'm in, and a couple of other artists we're developing. We're trying to get some stuff going on, so look for some of that. And I'm still producing and mixing, and you can find me at TobyWrightMusic.com.
Sweet. You haven't heard the last of Toby Wright.
He's the right man for the job.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yeah, I know, right?
Appreciate it. Thank you guys very much.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Holy shit, dude.
This was actually the first time that we were passing the mic back and forth. We haven't done that since Rockin' Pod.
It was definitely a challenge and a shot in my pride, I'm going to say, when we had to do this interview with one of the definitive producers in my eyes, and I'm sitting there worrying about the sound quality. We're passing the mic back and forth. I just keep telling myself, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And then Toby says, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing a project right now. So I took some inspiration from that. This wasn't my normal recording gig. This wasn't the normal quality or the normal sound. I shouldn't say quality. It's more of a sound. But it was fucking great because it was a conversation with Toby Wright.
It was a lot of fun. We got a little bit more out of him than we did last time, and I really loved that about it. I just love doing this podcast, the Discuss Metal thing, because it's we're able to kind of dig a little bit deeper into things and kind of expand and talk about things that don't necessarily fit in the format of discography discussion. So these are fun. There are more of them coming. So you guys can be expecting to see Discuss Metal in your feed as quick as we can get them out. That is it for the second episode of the Discuss Metal podcast. We really love doing these. If you guys want to tell us how you feel about them, make sure to reach out to us everywhere you reach out to discography discussion, including Facebook, Twitter, Discord, email. You can get a hold of us any way you want to get a hold of us, and you guys can look forward to getting these as quickly as we can get them to you.